The aquarium sat silent and foreboding at the edge of the city, a relic of public curiosity and wonder now draped in shadows and mystery. Its vast tanks, once alive with the vibrant hues of tropical fish and the graceful dance of stingrays, were dimly lit by failing bulbs. The air was heavy with the scent of salt water and old damp concrete, and a lingering chill crept along the corridors. No one would have predicted that within these glass walls a crime would unfold that would shatter the illusion of safety and ignite a relentless search for hidden truths. Late one humid evening, as storm clouds gathered overhead and rain began its steady drumming on the tiled roof, an anxious night guard named Malcolm discovered a horrifying scene in the rarely visited deep aquarium gallery. The gallery, a vast hall filled with a giant tank housing exotic creatures from faraway reefs, had always been the crown jewel of the aquarium. But now, near a side entrance leading to a forgotten storage area, a body lay motionless on the cold, wet floor. The victim, later identified as Darren Ellis, a quiet, diligent technician responsible for maintaining the delicate filtration systems that kept the marine life alive, was sprawled on the floor, his uniform damp and stained with dark patches of blood. His eyes, once keen and attentive to the subtle shifts in water clarity, now stared blankly at a ceiling obscured by shadows. In his outstretched hand rested a single unadorned piece of paper bearing a chilling message in hurried, jagged handwriting: "No secret remains buried." Malcolm's voice, usually steady as he patrolled the labyrinthine corridors of the aquarium, cracked as he called 911. Within minutes, the normally hushed corridors were invaded by the buzz of uniformed officers and forensic specialists in blue coveralls. The crime scene was cordoned off, and every inch of the area was carefully documented, from the pattern of wet footprints leading away from the body to the faint trail of blood marking the edge of a shattered decorative glass panel. The meticulously arranged scene hinted that the act had been planned with a cold deliberateness that sent shivers down the spines of all who later learned of it. Detective Serena Knight, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for unorthodox methods and a sharp eye for details that most would miss, arrived on the scene as the rain eased into a persistent drizzle. In the muted light that filtered through the large glass windows of the deep aquarium gallery, Serena's gaze swept slowly over the body of Darren Ellis. The victim's still form was surrounded by scattered personal items, a fallen tool from his belt, a crumpled schedule for maintenance tasks, and that solitary scrap of paper, the final vestige of a desperate act. Every detail was recorded in her notebook with clinical precision: the angle at which Darren's body lay, the way the paper clutched in his hand had fluttered in the damp air, and even the quiet drip of water from a leaky pipe that punctuated the heavy silence. Serena began her investigation by retracing Darren's final hours. Instead of following a neat chronological order, she opted for a non-linear approach. She gathered scattered witness testimonies, digital fragments, and physical clues, and then slowly interwove them into a tapestry of events that spanned weeks. Her first interview was with Liana Morales, a young aquarium attendant who had seen Darren several times during her shifts. Liana recalled that Darren had seemed unusually preoccupied in the days leading up to that fateful night. He'd spend long moments staring at the filtration system, almost as if he was listening for a hidden message, Liana said softly, eyes downcast. He even mentioned that the logs weren't matching up, that some of the figures for water flow and chemical balance were off. I thought he was just stressed about the equipment, but now I wonder if he uncovered something much bigger. Her words, tentative yet charged with worry, resonated with the unease that had grown in the background of Darren's routine work. Another key witness was Oscar, an elderly maintenance worker who had been with the aquarium for decades. His lined face and slow, deliberate speech belied a sharp memory for details. Oscar recalled a late night, not long before Darren's death, when he had seen the technician huddled near one of the storage rooms, meticulously scribbling in a small notebook. He was quiet then too, like he was piecing together a puzzle that only he could see. Oscar explained. I didn't pry. I only noticed that he looked troubled, as if he'd discovered a mistake that shouldn't be made. Oscar's recollections, delivered in a soft murmur, added another fragment to the growing mystery. The next phase of the investigation led Detective Knight to Darren's modest apartment, located in a cramped building near the aquarium's service entrance. The building's exterior was worn and unremarkable, a simple structure of brick and iron that housed those who kept the city's less glamorous side functioning. Inside, Darren's apartment was sparse, with a single room serving as both a living area and a workspace. The faint aroma of stale coffee and the lingering smell of industrial cleaning chemicals filled the air. On a battered wooden desk cluttered with loose papers, a stack of invoices, and a small digital camera, Serena discovered a leather-bound journal. Its pages, filled with meticulous entries and diagrams, chronicled Darren's investigations into the aquarium's maintenance logs. Early entries were technical and factual, notes on routine inspections, lists of equipment orders, and reminders about scheduled repairs. But as the days progressed, Darren's tone became increasingly anxious. In one entry he noted, "There is a consistent shortfall in our supply orders. Not much, maybe a few items here and there. But it never seems accidental. I fear someone is redirecting our resources, and if I continue to dig, I may reveal a truth that they'd rather keep hidden." The final entry was abruptly cut off, as if Darren had been interrupted mid-thought, leaving a haunting gap that would soon echo in the corridors of the investigation. Digital forensic experts were then tasked with retrieving data from Darren's old smartphone, the device that bore the scars of years of use. Using advanced recovery techniques, they managed to extract fragments of deleted text messages that hinted at warnings from an unknown sender using the alias Umbra. One message, partially reconstructed, read, "Stop now or face the consequences." Another warned in similar terse terms, "Keep your inquiries quiet." The cold, impersonal language of these texts was unmistakable, a deliberate effort to silence Darren, delivered without any trace of empathy or second thought. Determined to connect these digital threads with the physical evidence, Detective Knight turned her focus to the administrative records of the aquarium itself. With permission from management, she accessed the digital archives stored in the central server room, a space humming with the quiet sound of cooling fans and flickering monitors. Collaborating with an IT specialist named Garrett, who had an uncanny ability to sift through endless lines of code and data logs, Serena compared the current digital records with older, archived versions of maintenance logs and supply orders. What emerged was a pattern of subtle alterations, minor numerical discrepancies in the quantities of cleaning supplies ordered, slight shifts in the recorded timings of routine inspections, and adjustments that consistently favored a shortfall in resources. Each individual change was almost negligible, but together they painted a picture of a deliberate, systematic manipulation of the records, a cover-up engineered over time to divert funds from essential maintenance. Forensic accountants, working alongside digital experts, traced the financial trail. Their analysis revealed that the small, repeated discrepancies had led to a significant diversion of money funds that had been rerouted into an offshore account controlled by a shell corporation with no discernible connection to any legitimate business. The numbers were irrefutable. The cumulative shortfall, when calculated over several fiscal quarters, amounted to an amount large enough to suggest that the operation was not merely about mismanagement, but a calculated scheme to siphon resources from the aquarium's budget. As the evidence converged, Detective Knight began receiving anonymous communications through secure channels. These messages, delivered without any overt explanation or personal signature, offered only stark warnings: do not pursue what you cannot contain, and leave the numbers be, or pay the price. The messages, while devoid of cryptic symbolism, confirmed that someone with both the motive and the means was determined to keep the scheme and the truth undisturbed. The investigation reached its pivotal moment when federal agents alerted to the potential scope of the corruption joined the case. Their advanced digital forensics software meticulously reconstructed the timeline of the deleted text messages, showing a clear escalation in the frequency and severity of the warnings. Simultaneously, forensic accountants mapped out the financial discrepancies with such precision that it became impossible to dismiss them as mere errors. The comprehensive data, spanning digital records, handwritten journals, and financial transactions, now formed a damning mosaic, a coherent narrative that implicated a network of mid-level administrators and external suppliers in a long-running cover-up. Detective Knight compiled her findings into an extensive report, a dossier of hundreds of pages that chronicled every detail of the investigation. The report combined Darren's final journal entries, the reconstructed text messages from Umbra, detailed comparisons of original and revised maintenance logs, and testimonies from witnesses like Liana Morales Oscar and others. The dossier was submitted to the district attorney during a series of confidential briefings. Its contents outlined a deliberate operation spanning several years, in which subtle adjustments in digital records were orchestrated to divert funds and conceal a hidden financial scheme. The evidence pointed squarely to the manipulation of the aquarium's maintenance logs as a means to siphon money from its operational budget, a scheme that had ultimately led to the murder of a man who had dared to expose the truth. In response, the district attorney convened a grand jury at the county courthouse, a utilitarian building with stark functional architecture that bore the weight of countless legal decisions. Over several sessions, expert witnesses testified about the digital forensics methods used to recover the deleted texts, the rigorous statistical analyses that demonstrated the improbability of random errors, and the painstaking comparisons that revealed a systematic pattern of record alteration. Their combined testimonies left little doubt that the discrepancies were engineered and that the diverted funds flowed into an offshore account with clear ties to a covert network. After lengthy deliberations, the grand jury returned indictments on multiple charges, including fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to homicide, charges that directly connected the manipulation of the maintenance records to the murder of Darren Ellis. The trial that ensued was a marathon legal process, unfolding in a courtroom that thrummed with tension and anticipation. Federal prosecutors presented their case with unwavering focus, interweaving detailed digital reconstructions with forensic accounting charts that tracked the minute discrepancies over time. A digital forensics expert took the stand to explain, in clear terms, how the deleted messages from Umbra had been meticulously recovered, each text a chilling, impersonal warning that grew more frequent as Darren's investigation deepened. Forensic accountants unveiled complex graphs that illustrated how small, repeated adjustments had cumulatively diverted a substantial sum of money. Meanwhile, former employees and records clerks provided testimonies that recalled a time when the aquarium's logbooks were unassailable, a period that had been eroded by subtle, almost imperceptible alterations that ultimately led to the siphoning of funds. When Detective Knight took the stand, her testimony was measured and deeply personal. She recounted, with unflinching clarity, the moment she discovered Darren's body in that secluded corridor beneath the aquarium, the shock of the rain-soaked tiles, the silent testimony of the torn scrap of paper, and the painstaking process of connecting every digital and physical clue into a single damning narrative. Her voice, both technical and sorrowful, detailed how every piece of evidence, from the fragmented texts on her computer screen to the faded entries in Darren's journal, converged to expose a deliberate operation designed to divert resources and silence a determined investigator. Her testimony resonated powerfully, leaving the courtroom in a profound hush as the weight of the uncovered truth settled over everyone present. The verdict, when it came, led to the conviction of several mid-level administrators and technical operatives directly involved in manipulating the records. They received long-term prison sentences that underscored the severity of their crimes. However, many in the community felt that justice was only partly served. The highest-ranking conspirators, the architects of the entire scheme, managed to exploit complex legal defenses and hide behind layers of institutional protection, their identities redacted from the final public records. The incomplete exposure of those at the very top of the network left a lingering disquiet, a sense that while much of the corruption had been unmasked, some dark corners still remained untouched. In the aftermath of the trial, the aquarium's management faced an unyielding tide of public scrutiny. In response, they overhauled their digital record-keeping systems, installing advanced encryption protocols and instituting independent audits to ensure complete transparency. Every supply order, every maintenance log, was now subject to rigorous review, and public access to the records was expanded dramatically. Community leaders and watchdog groups rallied to safeguard the institution's integrity, and public forums were organized where citizens debated the lessons of the case and the importance of preserving historical accuracy in a digital age. Local media outlets produced a series of investigative documentaries that detailed the entire saga, from the chilling discovery in a dark corridor to the painstaking recovery of digital evidence that ultimately revealed the covert network. Academic conferences and public lectures discussed the ethical challenges of digital record keeping and the necessity of robust oversight in public institutions. The The story of Darren Ellis, a quiet, dedicated technician whose commitment to uncovering the truth cost him his life, became a symbol of the ongoing battle for accountability, inspiring a renewed dedication to transparency across the community. Detective Celeste Moran continued her work with unwavering resolve, each new case approached with the lessons learned from that fateful investigation. In moments of quiet reflection, as she reviewed the recovered pages of Darren's journal or reanalyzed the digital trail left behind by the persistent warnings, she was reminded of the fragile balance between order and chaos in a world increasingly governed by data. Every discrepancy, no matter how minor, was a call to vigilance, a reminder that even the smallest alteration in a record could reveal a vast network of corruption if one only dared to look. Years later, the legacy of the case reshaped not only the operations of the aquarium, but also the collective commitment of the community to transparency. The digital archives, once vulnerable to manipulation, became a shining example of public accountability, their contents continuously monitored by independent auditors and accessible to every citizen. Public forums, town hall meetings, and community workshops blossomed in neighborhoods across the city, where residents, experts, and civic leaders debated and reaffirmed the importance of preserving the truth. The story of Darren Ellis remained a powerful reminder, a testament to the belief that every hidden secret, no matter how meticulously concealed, would eventually be exposed through the perseverance of those determined to pursue it. The investigation at the aquarium, with its intricate blend of digital sleuthing, financial tracing, and human determination, was not merely a case of murder. It was a journey into the depths of modern corruption, a tale of how even the most unassuming institutions could harbor dangerous secrets. The transformation that followed, from a covert network of record manipulation to a publicly accountable system, marked a turning point in the community's history. While some aspects of the conspiracy remained veiled, the unyielding pursuit of truth ensured that the light of accountability would eventually pierce the darkness. In the end, the story became a living lesson, a reminder that the integrity of public records, the accuracy of digital logs, and the dedication of individuals willing to challenge the status quo are the cornerstones of a just society. Though the names of the highest conspirators continued to be hidden behind layers of redaction, the spirit of those who fought for transparency endured, inspiring new efforts to guard against secrecy in all its forms. And as the city continued to pulse with life, its streets busy, its people hopeful, the legacy of that investigation served as a steadfast beacon, urging everyone to question, to scrutinize, and to ensure that the truth, however deeply buried, would one day emerge, reshaping the narrative of the past and lighting the way for a brighter future. In the bustling market, amid stalls laden with fresh produce and vibrant textiles, the ordinary hum of commerce was abruptly shattered one crisp autumn afternoon. Shoppers meandered between vendors, their voices rising and falling in a gentle cadence, while the aroma of spiced meats and ripe fruit mingled with the tang of city air. Under a sky brushed with hints of apricot and indigo, life in the market had always pulsed with an infectious energy, a rhythmic dance of commerce and community. But that day, an unforeseen horror would ignite a chain of events that exposed hidden deceptions and left a community grappling with bitter truths. It began when Roderick Alvarez, a fruit vendor with a warm smile and a reputation for honesty, noticed something amiss behind his stall. Tucked away in a forgotten alley behind rows of neatly arranged stalls, he discovered a body sprawled across a concrete slab. The victim, later identified as Derek Shaw, had been a humble spice merchant known for his intricate blends and careful business practices. Derek's once vibrant eyes stared emptily at the low gray sky, and his neatly pressed shirt was stained with dark, drying blood. In his grasp he clutched a torn scrap of paper, its ink smeared in uneven strokes. The paper bore a simple, chilling message: "The past can't be concealed." Roderick's hands trembled as he fumbled for his phone, his heart pounding with a mix of disbelief and dread. He dialed 911, and within minutes, the lively atmosphere of the market was replaced by the sound of sirens and murmured commands. Officers in dark uniforms swarmed the narrow alley, where forensic experts dressed in blue coveralls and methodically equipped with cameras and evidence bags began to document every minute detail. They photographed the scattered debris, the precise angle of Derek's motionless form, the faint trail of footprints in the damp concrete leading away from the scene, and even the tiny smudge of red where a fingertip had brushed against a rusted metal drain. Detective Julia Benson arrived as the daylight softened to a hazy glow. Known for her keen analytical mind and a talent for noticing what others overlooked, Julia took her time walking slowly along the alley. The contrast between the usual vibrancy of the market and the grim tableau before her struck her immediately. She knelt beside Derek's body and carefully examined the torn scrap of paper clutched in his hand. No elaborate symbolism graced the message, only the stark words that suggested someone had tried to warn him or perhaps to silence him. The meticulous placement of the body, as if arranged rather than left to chance, hinted at a premeditated act. Instead of pursuing a linear timeline, Julia's investigation branched into multiple directions. Her first task was to speak with those who had been near the area when the tragedy unfolded. Hector, a young street performer known for his energetic drum routines, recalled a moment of uneasy silence before his act that afternoon. "I remember seeing Derek near the back exit," Hector said, his voice subdued. He looked agitated, almost like he was checking something on his phone repeatedly. "I didn't think much of it then, but in hindsight, it was a sign that he might have been onto something." Another witness, a gruff maintenance worker named Omar, described how he had seen Derek arguing with an unknown figure, a man in a dark jacket whose face he couldn't quite discern right outside a row of wholesale stalls. "They were whispering harshly, and Derek's face was flushed," Omar recalled. "I tried to intervene, but by the time I stepped forward, the man had melted into the crowd." These recollections began to sketch a picture of a man who had been embroiled in a dispute that might have put him in grave danger. Determined to understand the man behind the evidence, Detective Benson obtained a search warrant for Derek Shaw's modest apartment. Located in a worn building near the market, the apartment was a study in simplicity. The small living space featured a single bed against a faded wall, a rickety wooden desk cluttered with papers and old ledgers, and a narrow window that overlooked a crowded street. The apartment carried the scent of incense and aged paper. Hidden in a locked drawer, Julia discovered Derek's personal journal, a leather-bound notebook with pages yellowed by time and marked by careful flowing script. Derek's entries began as meticulous records of his daily routines, notes on spice inventory, lists of customers, reminders about supplier deliveries. But as the pages advanced, his tone shifted. He began recording inconsistencies in the invoices he received from suppliers, noting that shipments of rare spices were consistently short by a few packets, or that prices on the receipts did not match the originally quoted amounts. One entry, dated 3 days before his death, read, "There's a pattern here. Every delivery seems to be missing a small fraction of the product. I initially thought it was error, but now I suspect it's deliberate. I fear that someone is siphoning off what I've worked so hard to earn. I must be cautious. If I uncover the full truth, it could cost me everything." The final lines of the journal faded off abruptly, leaving an unsettling gap where further explanation might have resided. At the same time, the cyber unit recovered fragments of deleted text messages from Derek's phone, a rugged device that had clearly seen many busy market days. The recovered texts were terse, warning him in blunt terms. One fragment stated, "Stop digging or be finished," while another cautioned, "Leave it alone, or you'll regret it." Although the messages were incomplete, their cold, unyielding tone left no doubt that Derek's inquiries had attracted the attention of someone with a sinister intent. Julia then turned her focus to the digital archives maintained by the market's administrative office. The records, a mix of scanned paper documents and digital entries stored on aging servers, detailed every transaction made within the market, from the sale of produce to the ordering of supplies. With the assistance of a seasoned records clerk named Franklin, who had spent decades cataloging the minutiae of market life, Julia meticulously compared current digital entries with the original paper ledgers. What she discovered was a series of subtle discrepancies, a few items missing from shipments here, minor alterations in delivery times there. Taken individually, the differences were almost negligible, but when accumulated over months, they formed a disturbing pattern. The inconsistencies suggested that someone had been systematically altering the records, siphoning off small amounts from the total shipments. The financial analysis, performed by forensic accountants, confirmed that these cumulative discrepancies had resulted in a significant diversion of funds, money that had been funneled into an untraceable offshore account connected to a shell corporation. The evidence began to converge on a single hypothesis. Derek Shaw had discovered that someone within the market's intricate supply chain had been deliberately manipulating the records to steal a small percentage of goods on every order, a scheme so subtle that it had gone unnoticed for years, until Derek's meticulous investigation brought it to light. The financial trail, documented in numerous spreadsheets and transaction records, pointed to irregularities in the accounts of a local supplier, known simply as the warehouse. Interviews with former employees of the warehouse revealed that shipments had often arrived with slight shortfalls, discrepancies that were dismissed as minor errors until now. "I always assumed it was just miscounts," one former worker admitted, "but when it kept happening, it felt like someone was taking a small piece every time." His testimony, combined with the financial data, confirmed that a systematic operation was underway. Anonymous tips soon began arriving. A plain envelope, slipped under Detective Benson's office door at the market, contained a typed note: "Records can't hide forever." Another message, delivered via an untraceable email account, warned simply, "Stop or face the consequences." Each message added urgency to the investigation, suggesting that those behind the scheme were not only aware of Derek's probing, but were determined to silence him if necessary. Federal agents, alerted by the mounting evidence, joined the investigation. With their advanced digital forensic tools, they reconstructed a detailed timeline of the deleted messages, revealing that the warnings had become increasingly frequent in the final weeks before Derek's murder. Simultaneously, forensic accountants traced the financial anomalies back through a labyrinth of electronic transactions, confirming that small amounts had been deliberately siphoned off over the course of several years. The cumulative evidence now formed a damning mosaic, a coherent narrative that implicated a network of mid-level administrators and external suppliers in a covert operation designed to divert resources and mask the true financial state of the market. Detective Benson compiled her findings into a comprehensive report, a voluminous dossier that included Derek's journal, the recovered text messages, detailed comparisons of original and altered records, and a series of witness testimonies. The report, meticulously organized and replete with photographs, charts, and handwritten notes, was submitted to the district attorney during a series of confidential briefings. Its contents detailed a deliberate and systematic cover-up. Over time, minute adjustments in the records had allowed a hidden network to divert a significant sum of money from the market's operating budget. The evidence pointed clearly to the conclusion that Derek's death was not a random act of violence, but a calculated move designed to silence a man who had threatened to expose a deep-rooted corruption. Recognizing the case's profound implications for public trust and financial accountability, the district attorney convened a grand jury at the county courthouse, a utilitarian building with cold, functional corridors and a long history of dispensing justice. Over a series of intense sessions that stretched into stormy nights, expert witnesses testified about the digital forensic techniques used to recover the deleted messages, the statistical analyses that revealed the improbability of accidental discrepancies, and the thorough comparisons that uncovered the systematic alterations in the records. Their combined testimony left little room for doubt. The evidence was irrefutable, and the grand jury returned indictments on multiple charges, including fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to homicide, charges that directly tied the deliberate record manipulation to the murder of Derek Shaw. The trial itself was a grueling, multifaceted process, unfolding over several weeks in a courtroom filled with local residents, journalists, and advocates for transparency. Federal prosecutors presented a series of compelling exhibits on one screen. Digital forensic specialists demonstrated how the deleted texts recovered from Derek's phone formed a continuous series of warnings. On another, forensic accountants revealed elaborate graphs that charted the cumulative impact of the slight discrepancies in the supply records. Witnesses, including longtime employees of the warehouse and retired records clerks, described how the official logs had gradually shifted over time, leaving behind a trail of subtle but damning evidence. Every detail, from the precise timestamp of a digital log entry to the faded ink on a page in Derek's journal, was laid out with surgical precision. When Detective Julia Benson took the stand, She spoke with a clarity that was both analytical and deeply personal. She described the moment she first encountered Derek's lifeless form in that deserted corridor of the market, her voice steady as she recounted every painstaking detail of the investigation. Her testimony was a blend of technical expertise and raw emotion, a tribute to a man whose quiet determination had cost him his life, and a damning indictment of a system that had allowed corruption to fester in the shadows. The courtroom was silent, as she detailed the gradual unraveling of the fraudulent scheme and the relentless, anonymous warnings that had haunted her every step. In the end, the jury returned verdicts that resulted in the conviction of several mid-level administrators and technical operatives directly implicated in the cover-up. They received lengthy prison sentences that served as a stern warning against tampering with public records for personal gain. Yet many in the community felt that the verdict was incomplete. The top conspirators, the architects who had orchestrated the entire diversion, exploited intricate legal loopholes and remained shrouded in anonymity, their names redacted from the final documents. This incomplete justice left a bitter aftertaste for those who had followed the case closely, a reminder that the full extent of corruption sometimes remains only partially illuminated. In the weeks and months that followed the trial, the atmosphere at the market began to change. The management, forced to confront the scandal and the demands of an outraged public, overhauled its digital record-keeping systems, installing state-of-the-art encryption and mandating regular independent audits. New protocols were implemented to ensure that every shipment and every financial transaction was transparently recorded and subject to public scrutiny. Community activists and local government officials convened town hall meetings to discuss the case, demanding that no similar scheme ever be allowed to take root again. Independent media outlets produced a series of in-depth investigative reports and documentaries that chronicled every phase of the investigation, from the initial discovery of the body in the hidden alley behind the market to the elaborate digital reconstructions that unmasked a covert network of corruption. Public lectures and academic seminars debated the ethical implications of digital record keeping and the power of forensic technology in exposing hidden deceptions. The story of Derek Shaw, a humble merchant who had sacrificed his life in the quest for truth, became a symbol of the community's resolve to hold the powerful accountable and to safeguard the integrity of public institutions. Detective Julia Benson continued her work with a determined spirit, approaching each new case as a reminder of the high cost of uncovering hidden truths. In the quiet moments of the early morning, as the market slowly awakened to another day of commerce and conversation, she would revisit the recovered pages of Derek's journal and the reconstructed digital messages. Every line of evidence, no matter how minute, reaffirmed her belief that persistent inquiry, no matter how challenging, could ultimately bring even the deepest deceptions into the light. As seasons changed, and the vibrant pulse of the market resumed its daily rhythm, the legacy of the investigation endured in the collective memory of the community. New oversight measures and enhanced digital systems became a permanent fixture, ensuring that the public records remained untainted by future attempts at manipulation. The case was taught in local schools and discussed in civic forums as a powerful lesson in accountability and the relentless pursuit of truth. The memory of Derek Shaw served as an enduring reminder that even in the midst of everyday commerce and routine transactions, the smallest anomaly could reveal a vast network of corruption. This narrative, far more than a mere recounting of a single tragic event, became an ongoing call to vigilance, a compelling demonstration that every meticulously kept record and every cautious inquiry can serve as a bulwark against those who would distort reality for personal gain. In that spirit, the community embraced a renewed commitment to transparency, ensuring that no matter what secrets lay hidden beneath the surface, the light of truth would eventually reveal them all. The hospital loomed like a silent monolith against the twilight, its high-rise facade glistening with recent rain. Inside corridors stretched endlessly in a labyrinth of white walls and flickering fluorescent lights. Patients, staff, and visitors moved through the halls in a steady rhythm, a heartbeat of routine care and recovery. Yet that night, beneath the clinical order and the hum of ventilators and monitor beeps, a single act of violence would fracture the hospital's calm and ignite an investigation that would unravel a hidden tapestry of secrets. In the oncology wing, a secluded section bathed in soft blue light and quiet prayers, a body was discovered in an unoccupied patient room. When a nurse named Marissa Delgado made her rounds just after midnight, she found Dr. Felix Crane slumped in a reclined chair beside an IV stand. His usually alert eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, and his white coat, once pristine and emblematic of healing, was stained with a dark, spreading blotch of blood. In his right hand, clutched tightly, was a torn sheet of paper, its message unadorned and chilling. Truths unravel when left unchecked. Marissa's gasp echoed in the near-empty hallway as she fumbled for her phone. Within minutes, the sound of approaching sirens and the hurried steps of uniformed officers transformed the otherwise hushed corridors into a flurry of controlled commotion. Forensic specialists in blue suits methodically documented every detail, each footprint near the recliner, the precise angle of Dr. Crane's lifeless form, the smudged ink on the discarded paper. The scene exuded an unnerving orderliness, as if every element had been arranged with calculated care rather than being the chaotic byproduct of a struggle. Detective Ingrid Solano arrived at the scene as the hospital's night shift clung to its routines. Ingrid, with her cool, analytical gaze and a reputation for unraveling the faintest traces of truth, walked slowly along the corridor. The soft hum of distant monitors and the occasional murmur of nurses punctuated her measured steps. She knelt by the body, her gloved hands steady as she recorded observations in a small notebook. Every detail was absorbed. The dampness of the floor beneath her boots, the eerie silence that enveloped the room, and the torn paper that seemed to vibrate with a final, desperate warning. Instead of following a neat chronology, Ingrid's investigation unfolded in layers, each one revealing a new facet of a story far more intricate than an isolated murder. The victim, Dr. Felix Crane, had been a respected oncologist who had dedicated his life to his patients. Colleagues described him as thoughtful, patient, and unwaveringly ethical, a man whose gentle manner belied the intensity of his commitment to healing. Yet in the weeks preceding his death, a few whispered remarks had hinted at a growing disquiet. Dr. Helena Ortiz, a fellow physician in the same wing, recalled how Felix had confided in her one late evening during a quiet moment in the break room. He mentioned that some of the patient files in the digital archives seemed to be off. Helena said softly, her eyes dark with recollection. He wondered if there had been unauthorized changes, small discrepancies that when added up might hide something significant. I assumed he was overthinking, but now I fear he was onto something he shouldn't have been. Helena's words, fragile and tentative, suggested that Felix's investigations into the hospital's records had become more than an academic curiosity. They had grown into an obsession that could have dangerous implications. Ingrid's next step was to obtain a search warrant for Dr. Crane's modest apartment, located in a building just a few blocks from the hospital. The apartment, a sparse and functional space with little decoration save for a few framed family photos and a bookshelf laden with medical texts, reflected a life devoted to work rather than personal indulgence. On a small desk in the living area, hidden behind stacks of patient charts and handwritten notes, Ingrid discovered Felix's private journal. The pages, yellowed with age and filled with his careful, precise handwriting, chronicled his daily routines and gradually, a growing sense of unease. Early entries detailed his schedules, patient rounds, and the ordinary tasks of a hospital physician. But as the journal progressed, Felix began noting subtle anomalies in the hospital's digital records. He wrote, "I have compared the patient file updates with the original entries, and noted discrepancies, names missing, dates shifted, treatment details altered. At first I believed it to be a system error, but the consistency is alarming. I fear that someone with access to the system is deliberately tampering with our records." One entry, written just days before his death, ended abruptly. "If this continues, I must alert the board," and then the page went blank, as if the thought had been forcibly cut off. Meanwhile, the hospital's cyber unit, prompted by concerns raised by a few attentive nurses, managed to recover fragments of deleted emails and text messages from Felix's office computer and cell phone. These digital fragments, though incomplete, contained terse warnings from an unidentified sender using the pseudonym Nocturne. One recovered message warned, "Stop your inquiry or silence will follow," while another stated simply, "Cease now." The messages were clinical in tone, devoid of any overt emotion, yet their cold, unyielding language sent a clear signal: someone was determined to halt Felix's investigation at any cost. Ingrid's inquiry then turned to the hospital's administrative records. With the cooperation of a veteran records manager named Oscar, who had spent decades safeguarding patient files and financial logs, she began comparing the current digital records with archived paper logs kept in a secure vault in the hospital's basement. The records were voluminous, a testament to the institution's long history of care and bureaucracy. As Ingrid scrutinized the data, she discovered a series of subtle discrepancies: small numerical variations in the logging of equipment orders, minute alterations in the timestamps of patient file updates, and slight differences in the documented quantities of pharmaceuticals delivered to various departments. On their own, these differences might have been dismissed as minor errors in data entry. But when analyzed cumulatively, they suggested a deliberate pattern, a systematic manipulation of the hospital's records that diverted funds and potentially compromised patient care. Forensic accountants, brought in to analyze the financial trails, confirmed that the cumulative effect of these small alterations had resulted in a significant shortfall in the hospital's budget, money that had inexplicably been funneled into an offshore account. The diverted sums were small on any single occasion, yet over months and years they added up to a substantial amount, a sum large enough to indicate a coordinated long-term scheme. Ingrid's investigation began to weave together the disparate threads: Felix's journal, the recovered digital messages, the altered administrative records, and the testimonies from witnesses within the hospital. A recurring theme emerged: there was evidence of unauthorized changes to patient files and financial records, suggesting that someone with internal access was systematically tampering with the hospital's data. The purpose of these alterations was not immediately clear, but the financial diversion pointed to a motive rooted in personal gain or the concealment of malpractice. Anonymous tips began to trickle in as well. A handwritten note found in the corridor of the hospital's records room simply stated, "Do not question what must remain hidden." Another tip, delivered via a burner phone message, advised, "Discrepancies add up, investigate them, but be warned, they have eyes." Although these messages contained no elaboration, their terse, foreboding tone reinforced the notion that those behind the scheme were aware of the investigation and willing to use intimidation to preserve their secrets. Determined to pursue every lead, Detective Ingrid Solano coordinated with federal agents specializing in digital forensics and financial crimes. Using advanced software, the team reconstructed a near-complete timeline of the deleted messages from Felix's phone. Their analysis revealed that the warnings had escalated in frequency and severity in the final weeks before his death, a digital echo of the growing peril he had faced. At the same time, forensic accountants mapped out the financial transactions that had redirected funds from the hospital's budget to an offshore account associated with a shell corporation known as Meridian Solutions, a name that appeared unremarkable in public filings, but now served as a key piece in the puzzle of corruption. The mounting evidence culminated in a detailed report, an extensive dossier that interwove every element of the investigation into a coherent narrative. The report spanned hundreds of pages, combining photocopies of the altered administrative records, scanned images of Felix's journal pages, reconstructed text messages from Nocturne, and transcripts of interviews with hospital staff and administrators. In this meticulously organized file, Detective Solano laid bare the systematic manipulation that had been carried out over years, a deliberate, incremental redirection of funds and information designed to mask the truth and secure personal gain. The report left little room for doubt. Felix Crane had uncovered a deeply rooted scheme, and when his curiosity led him too close to the heart of the corruption, he paid with his life. In light of the overwhelming evidence, the district attorney convened a grand jury at the county courthouse, a stern, imposing building with cold stone walls and a legacy of solemn legal proceedings. In a series of long, arduous sessions that stretched late into storm-riven nights, expert witnesses testified about the digital forensic techniques that recovered the deleted messages, the statistical methods that confirmed the improbability of accidental discrepancies, and the financial analyses that traced the diversion of funds to Meridian Solutions. Their combined testimony was technical and unyielding, each expert's account reinforcing the conclusion that the discrepancies were not random, but the product of deliberate tampering. After hours of intense deliberation, the grand jury returned indictments on multiple charges, including fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to homicide, charges that directly tied the systematic manipulation of records to the murder of Dr. Felix Crane. The ensuing trial unfolded in a courtroom that buzzed with a tension born of anticipation and disbelief. Federal prosecutors presented their case with meticulous clarity, using large monitors to display digital reconstructions of the deleted text messages and detailed charts from the forensic accountants that mapped the cumulative financial misappropriations. Witness after witness took the stand. Veteran records clerks described how the old handwritten logs had been gradually overwritten by digital entries, while former IT specialists explained the advanced methods used to conceal the alterations. Each piece of evidence was laid out in a series of carefully structured segments, ensuring that even the smallest detail was accounted for. When Detective Solano testified, her voice was steady, but her eyes revealed the weight of the investigation. She recounted in detail the somber discovery in the hospital's research wing, the painstaking extraction of Felix's journal from his modest apartment, and the relentless process of cross-referencing every digital message with physical records. Her testimony was unhurried, each pause a measured reflection on the immense personal cost of exposing corruption. As she spoke, the courtroom fell silent, and every listener could feel the gravity of a truth that had been hidden in plain sight for too long. The trial ultimately resulted in the conviction of several mid-level administrators and technical operatives who had been directly implicated in the record manipulation scheme. They were sentenced to long-term prison terms, their names inscribed in the public record as a testament to the consequences of betraying public trust. Yet, as the gavel finally fell and the courtroom slowly emptied, many felt that complete justice had not been achieved. The highest-ranking conspirators, the individuals who had orchestrated the entire operation from behind layers of institutional protection, managed to shield themselves through complex legal maneuvers. Their identities remained largely redacted from the final documents, a persistent void that underscored the bitter truth that sometimes, even when much is exposed, the full spectrum of corruption remains partially hidden. In the months that followed, the hospital's management was forced to confront the scandal and institute sweeping reforms. The digital record-keeping systems were overhauled, with robust encryption and regular independent audits implemented to ensure that no further manipulation could occur. Public access to archived records was expanded significantly, and a dedicated oversight committee was established to monitor every transaction and log entry. The changes, though implemented gradually, signified a renewed commitment to transparency and accountability, an effort to restore trust that had been so deeply eroded by years of clandestine mismanagement. Local media outlets, galvanized by the revelations, produced a series of investigative features that detailed every facet of the case, from the haunting discovery in the silent corridors of the oncology wing to the intricate digital trails that ultimately exposed a vast network of corruption. Public lectures and community meetings emerged, with citizens, scholars, and experts debating the ethical implications of digital record keeping and the role of technology in uncovering the truth. The story of Dr. Felix Crane, a man whose quiet determination to preserve historical accuracy cost him his life, became a rallying point for those dedicated to ensuring that no secret, no matter how carefully hidden, could ever distort public trust again. For Detective Solano, the case was a defining chapter, a lifelong reminder that the pursuit of truth is a path fraught with danger, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to justice. In the solitude of her modest office, where the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminated stacks of case files and digital logs, she would often revisit the recovered pages of Felix's journal and the reconstructed messages that had once warned in sterile, impersonal tones. Each detail, from the faint stain of blood on a cold tile to the cumulative discrepancies in financial records, reaffirmed her belief that every hidden anomaly, however small, could unlock a vast network of deception. Years later, the legacy of the investigation reshaped not only the hospital's internal systems, but also the community's understanding of public accountability. The digital archives, once vulnerable to manipulation, were now rigorously maintained and regularly audited, ensuring that every transaction was transparent and accessible. Community activists and local educators held regular forums to discuss the importance of ethical record keeping, and the case became a cornerstone in academic discussions about the intersection of technology, finance, and public trust. The memory of Dr. Felix Crane endured in quiet tributes, in the unyielding resolve of those who continued to scrutinize every piece of data, and in the collective commitment to ensure that the truth, no matter how deeply concealed, would one day emerge. In a moment of reflection one crisp winter afternoon, as soft light spilled through frosted windows onto meticulously organized digital logs, Detective Solano paused to consider the journey that had brought her to this point. The investigation had begun with a single tragic discovery in the hospital's hushed corridors, and had grown into an unrelenting quest for truth that spanned digital messages, handwritten journals, and painstaking financial analyses. While some questions remained, such as the identities of the highest-ranking conspirators, the transformation of the hospital's record-keeping systems, and the community's renewed insistence on transparency, stood as a testament to the power of perseverance. The case of Dr. Felix Crane was not simply a story of a solitary murder or a series of altered records. It was an evolving narrative, a mosaic of digital footprints, human resilience, and the enduring quest to safeguard the truth. And as the hospital continued to serve as a beacon of care in the community, its once vulnerable archives now bolstered by modern technology and independent oversight, the legacy of that investigation lived on. It served as a constant reminder that even in the digital age, where data flows unseen, the smallest detail can reveal a vast network of corruption, and that the dedication to uncovering every hidden truth will always shine a light into the darkest corners. At dusk, the carnival lights burst into life with an unpredictable energy. Ribbons of color swirled above the midway, where a mix of laughter, music, and the occasional startled cry filled the humid air. The scent of cotton candy, sizzling hot dogs, and engine oil mingled together, creating a heady aroma that evoked both nostalgia and adventure. People in vibrant attire moved from ride to ride between the creaking Ferris wheel, the whirring carousel, and the chaotic bumper cars, completely absorbed in the spectacle of the fair. Yet beneath the surface of that exuberant display, something dark was unfolding. In a shadowed corner of the carnival grounds, near a deserted funhouse marked by peeling paint and shattered mirrors, a figure lay motionless. The victim was identified as Bryce Turner, a stagehand employed seasonally at the carnival. Known for his quiet humor and tireless work behind the scenes, Bryce had been the reliable force that kept the illusions of the funhouse alive. On that fateful night, however, he was found sprawled on the cold asphalt, his vibrant costume disheveled and stained with blood. His eyes were fixed in a vacant stare toward the broken glass overhead, and his gloved hand clutched a single, unremarkable scrap of paper that bore no decipherable message. No dramatic calligraphy, no cryptic symbols, just a plain, unadorned slip of paper as if tossed aside in haste. No one had seen anything unusual until Mara Lopez, a college student taking a break from her studies, rounded a corner near the funhouse. Her footsteps faltered as she noticed Bryce's body lying on the ground amid a scattering of debris. Shock and dread gripped her, and she immediately dialed emergency services. Within minutes, the vibrant chaos of the carnival was interrupted by the arrival of police cars, their sirens cutting through the festive background music. Uniformed officers and forensic teams soon swarmed the scene, their voices low and efficient as they began documenting every detail. The pattern of footprints in the wet asphalt, the glisten of blood against a backdrop of broken plastic, and the way the discarded paper lay crumpled near the victim's hand. Detective Marisol Vega was one of the first to step onto the scene. Clad in a dark jacket and wearing a focused expression that belied the underlying tension in her eyes, she took a moment to absorb the setting. The carnival, with its flashing neon signs and pulsating energy, seemed almost surreal, juxtaposed with the grim discovery. Instead of rushing to collect evidence, she walked slowly around the perimeter of the scene, her gloved fingers occasionally brushing against the damp surface. She noted the subtle clues, the slight tilt of Bryce's head, the disarray of tools scattered beside him, and the delicate imprint of shoe prints that led away toward the game stalls. Every detail was catalogued in her worn notebook with meticulous care. Rather than following a linear account, Marisol's investigation unfolded in layers, each clue interwoven with memories and testimonies from those who had been part of the carnival's nightly routine. Her first interview was with Rafael Diaz, the carnival's electrician, who had been fixing a flickering marquee on the opposite side of the grounds. Rafael described Bryce as a good man, always smiling, always there when you needed him. He recalled that earlier in the evening, Bryce had been unusually quiet and had kept glancing at a clipboard as if verifying something. "I didn't think much of it then," Rafael admitted, but now it seems he was trying to piece together a puzzle that no one else saw. His words hinted that Bryce's work may have extended beyond his regular duties, a secret investigation of his own. Another witness, a vendor who sold hand-painted signs, mentioned overhearing a heated exchange between Bryce and an unidentified man in a dark jacket near the ticket booth. "I caught bits of their conversation," the vendor said, lowering his voice. Bryce sounded agitated, almost pleading for answers, and the other man was curt and dismissive. It was like he was warning him off. "I never expected it would end like this." Such testimonies began to suggest that Bryce had inadvertently become entangled in something far larger than routine maintenance. Determined to piece together Bryce Turner's final hours, Detective Vega obtained a warrant to search his modest apartment. Tucked away in an aging brick building near the carnival, the apartment was small, a single room with minimal furnishings, its walls adorned with faded photographs of past carnival celebrations and a few mementos that spoke of a humble, hard-working life. In a battered desk drawer, hidden among receipts and old postcards, Marisol found Bryce's personal journal. The journal's pages, softened by time and filled with careful, unassuming handwriting, initially detailed the minutiae of daily tasks, lists of repairs performed, schedules of shifts, and the routine observations of a man who took pride in his work. Yet as the entries advanced, the tone shifted noticeably. In later pages, Bryce wrote of inconsistencies in the supply orders for maintenance tools and cleaning materials, small shortages that occurred week after week. "Every delivery seems to be missing something," one entry read. "I've double-checked the numbers and the invoices. It's as if someone is stealing a tiny fraction each time, so small that it wouldn't be noticed by most. But if you add it up, it's significant." The final entry, dated just 2 days before his death, ended abruptly with the words, "If I pursue this further," as if the thought had been violently cut short. The sense of mounting urgency was unmistakable. At the same time, the cyber unit managed to recover fragments of deleted text messages from Bryce's old mobile phone, a device that had seen many long shifts under the carnival lights. The recovered messages, though incomplete, were stark and unembellished. One message simply stated, "Stop investigating," while another threatened, "Your search ends here." The unvarnished tone of these messages made it clear that someone was intent on silencing Bryce before he could reveal whatever he had discovered. Detective Vega then shifted her focus to the carnival's administrative records. Permission was granted to access the digital logs and paper ledgers maintained in the office of the carnival director, a small room tucked away behind a heavy metal door in the central building. There, working alongside a veteran records clerk named Curtis, whose experience spanned several decades of carnival operations, Marisol painstakingly compared the current digital entries with the original handwritten logs stored in a filing cabinet. The differences were subtle at first, a number slightly off here, a date altered there, but when analyzed over several months the pattern became unmistakable. In the records for supply orders, the official numbers consistently recorded deliveries as complete, whereas the handwritten logs indicated that small quantities were always missing. Over time, these discrepancies had accumulated to a significant diversion of funds, suggesting that someone within the system had been siphoning off resources. Forensic accountants were brought in to analyze the financial data. They discovered that the diverted funds, while minor on a per-transaction basis, had amounted to a large sum when aggregated over the course of a year. The money appeared to have been funneled into an offshore account linked to a shell corporation that had been quietly operating behind the scenes of the carnival's supply chain. The financial trail, once painstakingly reconstructed, confirmed that the manipulation was not an accident. It was a deliberate, systematic cover-up. Throughout the investigation, Detective Vega began receiving anonymous tips that underscored the seriousness of the case. One plain envelope, left on her desk in the records office, contained a typed note warning, "Investigate at your own risk." Another message, sent from an untraceable email address, stated, "Don't disturb what is meant to be concealed." Though these messages lacked the dramatic flair of earlier warnings, their sheer insistence added a layer of urgency that spurred the investigation forward. As all these disparate threads wove together, the evidence pointed increasingly towards a covert operation run by mid-level administrators within the carnival's management, likely in collusion with external suppliers from the warehouse. The anonymous tips, the digital records, the physical evidence from Bryce's apartment, and the testimonies from colleagues all converged to form a damning narrative. Bryce Turner had discovered a hidden scheme that diverted funds from the carnival's operating budget to support a shadowy network of financial gain. And when he began to document these discrepancies, someone decided to silence him. Federal agents, alerted to the case's potential scope, joined the investigation. With their sophisticated digital forensic tools, they reconstructed a near-complete timeline of the deleted messages from Bryce's phone, demonstrating that the warnings had escalated in the final days before his murder. Simultaneously, forensic accountants mapped the financial irregularities with such precision that it became impossible to dispute the deliberate nature of the discrepancies. The combined evidence now formed an undeniable mosaic, a meticulously orchestrated cover-up that had persisted for years and had ultimately claimed the life of a man who had only sought to protect the truth. Detective Vega compiled her findings into a detailed report, a voluminous dossier that spanned hundreds of pages, photographs of the crime scene, scans of Bryce's journal pages, digital reconstructions of text message trails, and charts detailing the financial shortfalls were all included. The report presented a coherent narrative linking the subtle manipulation of supply records to a significant financial diversion, and it argued convincingly that Bryce's murder was a calculated act designed to prevent the exposure of this corruption. The district attorney, recognizing the gravity of the evidence, convened a grand jury at the county courthouse, a no-nonsense building with plain functional design that had long been a forum for critical public cases. In several marathon sessions that lasted well into stormy nights, expert witnesses testified about the digital techniques used to recover the deleted messages, the statistical analyses that confirmed the improbability of random error, and the financial evidence that tracked the diverted funds to an offshore account. Their testimonies, clear and unyielding, left little room for alternative interpretations. After extensive deliberation, the grand jury returned indictments on charges including fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to homicide, directly linking the deliberate tampering of records to the murder of Bryce Turner. The trial that followed was a protracted legal battle unfolding over several weeks in a packed courtroom. Federal prosecutors presented their case with unwavering precision, weaving together digital evidence, financial data, and witness testimonies into a narrative that was both technical and deeply human. A digital forensics specialist explained how the deleted messages recovered from Bryce's phone formed an uninterrupted chain of threats that escalated as his investigation deepened. Forensic accountants unveiled intricate graphs demonstrating how minute discrepancies, when aggregated, diverted a considerable amount of money. Witnesses described in hushed tones the gradual erosion of trust within the carnival's administration, a process that allowed corruption to seep into every record and every transaction. When Detective Vega took the stand, her testimony was both measured and impassioned. She recounted the discovery of Bryce's body, the painstaking extraction of his journal from his modest apartment, and the relentless cross-verification of digital logs with paper records. Her voice was steady as she detailed the seemingly insignificant changes that over time revealed a systematic manipulation of the records. Each piece of evidence, every photograph, every scanned page, every financial chart was laid out for the jury, forming a damning mosaic of deliberate wrongdoing. The trial concluded with convictions for several mid-level administrators and technical staff who had been directly implicated in the record manipulation scheme. They were sentenced to lengthy prison terms, and their names were recorded in the public record as a testament to the dangers of unchecked corruption. Yet despite this legal victory, many in the community felt that the case was only partially resolved. The top conspirators, the architects of the entire cover-up, managed to evade full accountability by exploiting intricate legal defenses and remaining hidden behind layers of institutional protection. Their identities were redacted in the final documents, leaving a persistent reminder that even when much is exposed, some secrets may continue to lurk in the background. In the aftermath of the trial, the management of the carnival was forced to confront a stark new reality. Under immense public pressure and intense scrutiny from independent auditors, the carnival's administrative systems were overhauled. Digital record keeping was revamped with modern encryption and rigorous audit protocols, ensuring that every transaction and every adjustment was transparent and publicly accessible. The changes were gradual, but they restored a measure of trust in an institution that had long been a beloved hub of community life. Local media, driven by a commitment to accountability, produced a series of investigative features that chronicled every twist of the case, from the haunting discovery in the shadowed alley behind the funhouse to the painstaking digital reconstructions that unmasked the covert network. Town hall meetings and community forums, held in local civic centers, became platforms where citizens debated the ethics of record keeping and the importance of preserving unaltered history. The story of Bryce Turner, a quiet man whose quest for truth cost him his life, became emblematic of the community's resolve to challenge corruption in all its forms. For Detective Marisol Vega, every new case was a reminder of the heavy burden carried by those who dare to uncover hidden truths. In the solitude of her modest office, where the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminated stacks of case files and digital logs, she often revisited the recovered pages of Bryce's journal and the carefully reconstructed text messages. Each fragment of evidence reinforced her conviction that no discrepancy was too small to be ignored, and that the relentless pursuit of truth was a duty to the community and to those who had lost their lives in the process. In the years that followed, the legacy of the investigation at the carnival remained deeply woven into the fabric of the community. The digital records, once vulnerable to subtle manipulation, were now safeguarded by robust systems and independently audited protocols. Public trust was gradually restored, and the memory of Bryce Turner was honored in community gatherings and local history exhibits. The case became a subject of academic study and public discourse, celebrated as an example of how even the most unassuming institutions can harbor dark secrets, and how determined inquiry can ultimately bring those secrets into the light. Ultimately, the story was not just about a single act of violence or the unraveling of a covert financial scheme. It was about the resilience of a community that, despite being rocked by betrayal, refused to let its history be rewritten. It was a reminder that every record, every log, every whispered discrepancy matters, and that when the truth is pursued with unwavering determination, it can transform even the most shadowed corners of society into a beacon of accountability. Even as the carnival lights faded with the passage of seasons, the impact of that investigation endured. The new administrative protocols and digital safeguards stood as a testament to the community's renewed commitment to transparency, while the story of Bryce Turner continued to inspire those who believed that every hidden secret, no matter how minute, deserved to be exposed. For Detective Vega and her colleagues, the case was a constant reminder that the pursuit of truth is an ongoing journey, a journey that, despite its challenges, ultimately fortifies the bonds of trust and integrity, in a world where even the smallest detail can reveal a vast network of deception.